If Jesus was really a communist, well then where is the verse where he advocates for a communist system of government? Where is the verse where he advocates that you take from one person to give to another? Because that is what welfare is, what social welfare is, and what communism is. It is the taxation of one person to give that wealth to another person. You see, this is an accusation that I hear a lot, is that Jesus was a communist, and I have been debating countless liberals. Well, by countless I only mean 3, so it ain't really countless, but I've debated at least 3 liberals on this within the last month, and none of them could cite a verse where Jesus was advocating for a communist system of government. The first guy that I debated regarding this accusation was that he was saying that because Jesus advocated for giving unto the poor, for giving unto others, that was basically evidence that he is a communist. And I asked him, cite me the verse where Jesus advocates for a system of government. He didn't even bother to quote any verse. He just decided that early on in the discussion, he was pretty much done with it. Second guy whom I have debated on this accusation, he quoted 1 John 3:17, and I asked him, how does this verse translate into an advocacy for a communist system of government? In the verse, Paul is telling people who are more well off to donate their stuff to the poor, to the less well off. But there is no mention of government in that, just that you should be generous, that you should donate. The guy could not explain the advocacy for the communist system of government, and later on I asked him, quote any verse that advocates for a communist system of government. The guy couldn't answer. He just ended off the debate by trying to ask questions that basically smear Christian conservatives and Christian libertarians. Third guy that I debated regarding this question, he tried a little harder. The first verse that he quoted was from Acts 4:32 through 36, where basically Peter, one of the disciples of Jesus in the aftermath, after his resurrection, after his death and resurrection, and then ascendance to heaven, where they basically sold all their goods, all their property away, and then gave all the money to the apostles and Peter. And he did not answer my question. The guy that I was debating with, I was asking, where is the verse that Jesus is advocating for a communist system of government? And in that verse, Acts 4:32 through 36, was not Jesus speaking. That was the writings of the telling of a story of a group of Christians giving away their stuff. It wasn't even Peter advocating for a communist system of government. There was no government at all involved in this. This was just a bunch of free individuals who gathered together, formed their own little Christian commune, I guess you could say, and they freely gave all their money and all the money that they made off of selling their property to the apostles. They were not forced by the sword to sell their property and give away all their money. They freely did that. And the guy also, without quoting a verse, mentioned the passage of Jesus cleansing the temple. And I hear this a lot from other liberals and other leftists that try to make the case that Jesus was a communist or a liberal or something like that, is saying that this is evidence that Jesus was an anti-capitalist and that he was in fact a communist. The thing is, Jesus wasn't going around the land tearing up every single bazaar and market that he had ever come across. And understanding the context of the passage, Jesus was also saying, you have turned my house into a den of thieves. This place was meant to be a house of prayer. So if we was to look at Jesus' words, we would see the reasoning for why he was tearing up the place. Is that originally the temple was supposed to be a house of prayer, that it was not supposed to be a place of business. That one particular place. He was not saying that you shouldn't at all, that there shouldn't be a market anywhere in the world, but referencing to how they have ruined his temple. And Romans 13, 1 through 7, the same guy also quoted this verse to try and back up his accusations of Jesus being a communist. In Romans 13, 1 through 7, there is mention of government, but there is no mention of Jesus saying anything. It was a letter from Paul to the Romans that you are to abide by your government, that you are to obey your government. You are to obey your political leaders. And there's nothing in that passage of the Bible that's mentioned about donating to the poor. Paul didn't even touch on that subject in that particular passage. So there's nothing communist about that. It's just Paul was saying in that passage, obey your leaders. And the third verse that this very same person quoted was Luke 14, 13 through 14. And in that verse, there's no mention of government at all. Yes, it is Jesus speaking, but he is telling you as a free individual to donate your own stuff to the poor. Like, seriously, that is not an advocacy for a communist system of government. But in all three circumstances, of all the three liberals that I have debated on this, they could not quote a single verse in the Bible where Jesus is advocating for a communist system of government. There are plenty of verses in the Bible from Jesus, Paul, and many other people in the Bible that are saying that you should donate your own stuff. But they do not advocate for a communist system of government. Even Peter in Acts 4, 32 through 36, there was no advocacy for a type of system of government. That was people willingly, they were being led by Peter to sell all their property and donate that money to the apostles. You also have to understand the context of that verse. Like, why did they do it? It's probably explained earlier in that passage, earlier in the book of Acts, but that's for a different subject. It's not like in that particular passage, merely just the verses, Acts 4:32 through 36, that Jesus was saying, set up a system of government that does this. Donating your own stuff as a free individual is an entirely different issue. It is completely different from setting up a system of government that is communist. Donating your own money to the poor or to anyone in need, that is not explicitly a liberal, socialist, or communist thing. Conservatives and libertarians and capitalists can do this very same thing as well, while also pursuing their own private business affairs at the same time. Now, if you want to make the argument that conservatives and libertarians, Christian conservatives and libertarians, are not generous enough with their own money, well then fine, make that argument. But that is completely different from saying that Jesus was a communist. So, my final question to all the liberals, communists, and socialists, progressives, and leftists of all fields, if Jesus really was a communist, well then where is the verse where he advocates for a communist system of government? Where?